Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love, let the music get you high, and when it's said and done, you'll know.
I have never owned a gun. I hate guns. I drink no booze. A gun in the home is far more likely to kill oneself, a family member, or a friend than a stranger breaking in. Some years ago, a retired white Albuquerque judge shot and killed his former wife and himself. If anyone could have told this judge years before he would kill her and himself, could he have believed it? My parents were miserable cellmates until death in the prison of marriage, very hard on both of them. I wish they had parted. Some couples become better friends when no longer living together. Fortunately, my parents were not boozers and no gun in our home. A severely abused young white man shot and killed my father's parents in bed in Illinois in 1976. A man pulled a gun on me here in the 1970s. Two brothers who were both New York City cops had 10 years of spotless records. In an awful argument, one brother shot and killed the other. We all are capable of terrifying, deadly violence, even toward our closest loved ones, especially if we own a gun, especially if we drink booze, especially if we're addicted to violent movies and video games. A woman wrote this to make teenagers think what becoming a mother means. If your child throws up all over your bed, are you or the father going to clean it up? Stay up all night with a crying child and then go to work the next day? When the baby is sick, will you cancel your plans with your friends and stay home? Will you skip buying clothes or the latest cell phone for yourself because you can barely afford food for your little one? Are you willing to give up your dreams of school or travel because the child you gave birth to will grow up and need shoes, an education, or medical care? Are you prepared for when this cute, cuddly infant becomes a screaming 2-year-old? If you continue your education, will you have the energy to work and care for a child who totally depends on you for all physical and emotional needs? And most important of all, can you handle all of this alone if suddenly the father decides he's not ready for the responsibility? Signed, waited till I was old enough and glad of it. A single parent writes, are you emotionally, physically, and financially ready if you have a premature or handicapped baby? I am the parent of a severely handicapped son. His twin sister had ADHD, and by God's grace and just dumb luck, I'm handling it well so far. Signed, Flying Solo in South Dakota. A wise mom in Alabama wrote, "Parents need a sense of humor, an infinite amount of patience and thick skin. Children can take the longest time eating, using the bathroom, telling a story, asking a question, etc. And there will be many occasions when they will tell you that you are the meanest mommy or daddy, or that they hate you. Can you handle that with grace, firmness, and patience?" And someone in Michigan wrote, "My question is, can you provide a safe environment to raise the child? One of the biggest dangers to young children is abuse." Having heard so many stories about young parents shaking babies that won't stop crying, or worse, this should be carefully considered before becoming a parent. The violence in Gaza and Israel is bringing horrifying new levels of human suffering to both Israelis and Palestinians. Explosions of violence never just happen. Since 2007, 16 years, Gazans have lived under siege, prohibited from leaving their open-air prison by a high-security militarized wall and platoons of Israeli soldiers. Over 2 million Palestinians. Well before the latest escalation, the transit of most goods was banned. People in Gaza couldn't get construction materials to repair the apartment blocks, the power plants, the water treatment facilities, the hospitals, schools, mosques, and churches that Israel bombed repeatedly in 2008, 2012, 2014, 2018, and 2021. Water was already unavailable except for expensive purchases from Israeli water companies, and food has long been scarce. By the age of 2, 20% of Gaza's children are already stunted. Human rights experts, United Nations officials, faith leaders, and others have warned for years that the systemic oppression rights groups now identify as apartheid would one day be too much to stand. Resistance would be inevitable. For decades, Palestinian resistance has taken overwhelmingly nonviolent forms, but the world didn't hear, or if it heard, it did not answer. When the United Nations warned in 2012 and 2015 that by 2020 Gaza would be unlivable without a Herculean effort by the international community, the world did not respond. This time, the resistance took a violent form, including Hamas targeting civilians in horrifying and illegal ways. Those illegitimate acts must be condemned. But if we're serious about preventing violence, all violence, we need to remember those horrific acts of Hamas did not come out of nowhere. Sending more bombs, more warplanes, more guns, more bullets will not solve the problem. I drink no booze. Booze has devastated the lives of many of my dear friends. Booze causes car crashes, paralyzing and killing thousands of people. Booze causes awful family fights, ruined romances. Booze causes horrible holiday memories. I do not want to make it easier for me to say or to do things that I later will terribly regret. Men wake up in jail not remembering stabbing their wife or buddy while drunk the night before. Many lean, attractive bodies will not stay lean and attractive if they keep on boozing and eating junk food. Booze lowers immunity to disease, including COVID. Booze lowers immunity to disease, including COVID. Booze harms the whole body: heart, blood vessels, kidneys, liver, stomach, brain, nerves. Booze increases the risk of catching sexually transmitted disease from infected partners. Both booze and cigarettes lower the sex hormone testosterone, causing men as they get older not to get good erections. Which booze, which cigarette ads say that? Why would sex-loving persons consume something that lowers our sex hormone? Both booze and cigarettes lower our sex hormone. If the most good-looking man in town has to drink booze to drown his shame and his guilt in order to make love with me, my answer is no thanks. Many smart, hard-working people start out as social drinkers and end up sick, lonely alcoholics, dying young. I urge all musicians, stop singing words in English and in Spanish glamorizing booze, glamorizing tequila, poison words, glamorizing booze, jealousy, cheating, contaminate many beautiful, heart-touching melodies. I love the melodies, but I hate many of those words. Glamorizing booze and jealousy and cheating and revenge. Community leaders and parents set a public example. Live sober. Drink no booze. Pledge publicly to drink no booze the rest of your life. That's my pledge. Imagine if all the money that people in the United States spend on booze went to help homeless children all over the world. Imagine if all the land used to grow grapes and grain to make booze was used instead to grow healthy food for hungry people. I enjoy deep conversations, and I drink no booze. I enjoy warmly hugging men and women friends, and I drink no booze. I enjoy dancing up a storm as well as I can since my hit and run, and I drink no booze. live passionately with no booze poisoning our minds and our bodies. A nuclear bomb hitting Albuquerque would cause a fireball 3 times the temperature of the surface of the sun. 3 times the temperature of the surface of the sun if a nuclear bomb hit Albuquerque. A nuclear bomb hitting Albuquerque winds up to 300 miles per hour. Many of our bodies would be vaporized with our shadows left on the sidewalk. Many bodies would be horribly burned, crushed by falling buildings, sliced by flying glass. If parents were at work and children were in school or daycare when a nuclear bomb hit Albuquerque, the children would die without their parents ever reaching them. U.S. nuclear bombs now are much larger than the bombs the United States used to mass murder Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, in 1945. A nuclear war between the United States and Russia would block out the sun for growing food. A nuclear war between the United States and Russia would cause 2 billion, that's 1,000 times 2 million, people to starve. Many nations have signed the treaty to stop more nuclear weapons, but the U.S. government strongly opposes that treaty. I strongly compliment the Archbishop of Santa Fe's Archdiocese, John Wester, for damning nuclear weapons. And all of you who agree with that and support his stand of conscience, I urge you to call, as I have, his office, complimenting him. And I'm sure that he has gotten flack from families who are involved at Sandia Weapons Lab, Los Alamos Weapons Lab. So if you care about human life and you damn nuclear weapons, call the Archbishop's office, as I did, and compliment him for his stand of conscience against nuclear weapons. Sadly, the U.S. government is addicted to nuclear weapons and to war. The money the United States constantly spends on mass murder would house all U.S. homeless people. The money the U.S. constantly spends on nuclear weapons and mass murder would provide treatment programs for alcoholics and other drug addicts. The money the United States constantly spends on mass murder, war, nuclear weapons would provide free medical care for everyone in this nation. Would you be proud to have family members designing nuclear bombs at Sandia Weapons Labs here in Albuquerque? Were many Germans proud to have family members working in the Nazi concentration camps and gas ovens, killing millions? Evil insanity. And never forget, Albuquerque would become one of the main targets if there's a nuclear war because of Kirtland Air Force Base and Sandia Weapons Lab. Albuquerque would become one of the main targets in a nuclear war. Daniel was my only Albuquerque friend ever to visit me on my family farm in Illinois when he was 22 in 1984. He came to visit me to get away from the drugs in Albuquerque. He met my dad. My mother had died 2 years before. The first night, he and I walked 4 miles under the bright moon. And Daniel told me he wished he could be as open as I am. And that first night, I showed Daniel his bedroom, and I went into my bedroom upstairs in our old farmhouse. I heard Daniel go to the bathroom, and when he was going back to his room, I asked him if he wanted to lie down beside me in my bed. Daniel came in. He lay down for an instant, and then he got up and went to his room. Daniel told me the next day he had felt like screaming last night. My dad, who slept downstairs, would have freaked out if Daniel had screamed. And one day, Daniel called me into the bathroom. He was sitting on the stool. He had a magnificent, huge heart-on. He was offering his cock to me to suck, but I did not suck his cock. And later I explained to him why I had not sucked his cock. I told him I am attracted to him, but I knew how changeable he was. I did not want him to think less of me. I did not want him to think less of himself. I did not want him to think less of our sex if I had sucked his cock. Now, at almost 78, I want sex with certain men who have no shame, no guilt about sex with men. Daniel worked some in my dad's business driving trucks. Daniel had part in a local play there. I introduced Daniel to many people. Daniel and I went to a nude beach in Wisconsin, and I surely told him how attracted I was to him. After Daniel returned to Albuquerque, sadly, Daniel got arrested on drug-related charges. He did many years locked up. May 31st, 2011, 12 and a half years ago, Daniel visited me here in Albuquerque. He told me he wanted sex with me for the first time, but not a relationship. He said if I told anyone, he would kill me and maybe kill himself. I told him I want to celebrate sex with a friend, not keep it as a poisoned secret to keep him from killing me and himself. He and I did not have sex. We talked about his experiences in Illinois 27 years before. And when he walked out my door that day, he said, "I love you." Maybe the only time since he and I met 39 years earlier. 2 days later, Daniel was dead, killed violently on the street. I was devastated. I deeply loved Daniel. For millions of years, dead plants, dead animals became coal, oil, and natural gas underground. And the burning of coal, oil, and natural gas releases huge amounts of carbon into the Earth's atmosphere, causing the climate crisis. We need to change now to enjoy living simply, on much less, to save plant life, animal life, human life on Earth. I thank many Jews of conscience in the United States, Amy Goodman, Noam Chomsky, and many, many others in Jewish Voice for Peace. I compliment and I thank many Jews of conscience in Israel who have spoken out loud and clear, publicly damning the Israeli government's brutal oppression and mass murder of Palestinians for decades, and especially now. One former Israeli soldier said years ago that Israeli soldiers committed quote, unimaginable practices against Palestinians, competing among themselves who could kill more Palestinians, bragging afterward about how many they killed, deliberately targeting and killing children, simply walking home from school, slamming the heads of handcuffed Palestinians into concrete walls. This is what a former Israeli soldier testified that he saw other Israeli soldiers commit years ago. Israel has illegally occupied and controlled the Palestinian territories, the West Bank and Gaza, for 56 years. U.S. federal income tax dollars buy the tanks. U.S. federal income tax dollars buy the helicopters. U.S. federal income tax dollars buy the bulldozers and missiles the Israeli military uses to terrorize, to cripple, to paralyze, to mass murder, to make homeless the Palestinian people. Israel receives nearly $4 billion this year, far more of U.S. tax dollars than any other nation on earth. And I have called our 2 U.S. senators and our congresswoman in Washington, D.C., and their local offices, 6 calls, condemning the U.S. backing, funding, supporting the horrific hell created in Palestine's Gaza Strip. How many Palestinians would it take murdered by the Israeli government for Congress people to have the balls, to have the conscience, to have the courage to say this must stop, to say we must cut off all U.S. military aid to Israel. Every United States federal income taxpayer pays for Israeli atrocities against the Palestinians. The U.S. empire has also supported for decades corrupt, bloody Arab dictatorships in Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. The United States routinely sides with Israel against the Palestinians. The United States has never had a fair, even policy toward the Israelis and the Palestinians. Most members of Congress, major presidential candidates, are scared to hell of condemning Israeli atrocities. The Israeli military has killed hundreds, now thousands, of Palestinian boys and girls, and has wounded thousands more. Scores of other nations have often condemned Israeli persecution of Palestinians. Now, make no mistake, I oppose all violence by Hamas against the Israelis. I oppose all violence by Israelis against Palestinians. I strongly support peace and human rights for all people in Israel and in Palestine, Jews and Palestinians. Revenge and more violence are not the answer for Israelis. Revenge and more violence are not the answer for Palestinians. I have paid no U.S. federal income tax for 44 years, not one damn bloody penny. I refuse to pay for the United States to back Israel in robbing, torturing, massacring Palestinians. Not one damn bloody penny for 44 years. I refuse to support all U.S. atrocities around the world with even 1 penny of U.S. federal income tax for 44 years. Every day in my blended smoothies, I eat many healing herbs, and garlic is number 1. Never cook garlic. Raw garlic is great for the immune system to fight off all bad germs, including COVID. Antibiotic drugs often kill good germs along with the bad germs, and that's not good. We need the good germs to be healthy. But garlic kills only the bad germs. Garlic helps the good germs. Garlic helps arthritis, high and low blood pressure. Garlic helps colds, flu, congestion. Garlic helps cough, earache, diabetes. Garlic helps gangrene, hepatitis, herpes. Garlic helps all infections, including AIDS, tuberculosis, COVID. Garlic helps heart disease, pneumonia, insomnia, to give you good sleep. Garlic prevents and gets rid of parasites and worms. People who eat the most garlic have the least cancer. And garlic is good for sex. Eat only raw garlic, not cooked, if you want the full best results. Each garlic bulb has sections called cloves. Depending on the size of the cloves, I eat 2 to 6 cloves every day in my blended smoothies. Lots of raw garlic plus extra hot red chili pepper powder becomes nature's penicillin to prevent and to stop all infections. Parents, if you want your children to be open and honest, are you parents always open and honest with them? Do you ever ask them to lie for you about anything? Parents, if you want your children to be dependable, do you keep your promises to them and to others? If you want your children to apologize and ask for forgiveness when they wrong you, do you, parents, apologize and ask forgiveness when you wrong them? If you want them to be warm and affectionate, do you warmly hug them often with deep feeling? And how can you lecture your children not to use street drugs with their friends if you are hooked on booze, Valium, junk food, cigarettes? Parents, never demand your children to obey you and other authorities without questioning. When parents teach kids to follow orders and to obey other authorities without questioning, these kids often become soldiers who murder on command with no conscience in Auschwitz, Vietnam, Iraq, Chechnya, Afghanistan, Gaza. Teach kids by our own lives to question deeply everything: religion, politics, government, family secrets, whatever, and to follow their conscience no matter the cost, and to love and to do good to all people, including our enemies. And that, for me, must include the hit-and-run driver who injured me May 16th this year. Goat heads are the fruit of the puncture vine. Goat heads are hard on our bare feet, on bicycle tires, but the puncture vine's flowers, stems, leaves, and especially the goat heads are great for our health. I eat ground up goat heads every day in my blended smoothies, 2 to 6 teaspoons of ground up goat heads. Puncture vine stimulates our appetite. Puncture vine, including, of course, the goat heads, the most important part, stimulates nursing mother's milk flow Puncture vine removes worms from our intestines, lowers bad cholesterol. Puncture vine gives slower, stronger heart function and lowers the diastolic blood pressure. And puncture vine, again, especially the goat heads, the most important part of the puncture vine, is also called nature's Viagra. For 5,000 years, puncture vine has been recommended as a sex tonic for men. A sex tonic for men. And one of the best stimulants for sex. Puncture vine helps anemia and back pain, cancer and coughs. Puncture vine helps diabetes and digestion, dizziness and gout. Puncture vine helps headaches and hepatitis. Puncture vine helps hemorrhoids and kidney stones, rheumatism and sore throat. Puncture vine helps venereal diseases. Puncture vine improves the immune system, balances both male and female hormones. Puncture vine eases menopausal symptoms, increases stamina and endurance, builds muscle, revitalizes liver, kidney, and urinary tract. Puncture vine, especially the goat heads, is a gentle laxative. Puncture vine is one of the best herbs on earth to flush poisons from the body. I eat ground up goat heads and make sure they're well ground because you don't want those thorns in your guts. Well ground up goat heads in my blended smoothies every day. 2 to 6 teaspoons. I used to gather them in this area, but for years now I've been ordering them from Mountain Rose Herbs in Eugene, Oregon, because they have organic goat heads that are the goat heads just by themselves, and then you can grind them up yourself or have a friend grind them up, or sometimes Mountain Rose Herbs has them available ground up. I get many herbs from Mountain Rose Herbs in Eugene, Oregon. They get herbs from all over the world, wild-crafted and organic. They have wonderful service. A man beaten horribly as a kid by his alcoholic father learned to endure the beatings with not even a whimper, to not give his dad the satisfaction of seeing his pain. And as a grown man, he is not able to show any sign of pain or sorrow, because he had learned so well as a kid to hide his feelings of pain from his alcoholic father who beat him. And many people think this man is cold-hearted, but he says they have no idea what goes on inside of him. Adults cannot beat kids into being good. Adults cannot hit kids into being good. Hitting kids beats evil deeper into them. Hitting kids teaches them, make people obey you out of fear and pain. And that's what you're teaching kids if you hit them. Hitting kids teaches them, hit people you love when you're angry. Hitting kids teaches kids not to respect their own bodies and not to respect other people's bodies. And many kids beaten or hit in any way later abuse their own bodies with booze, cigarettes, other drugs, junk food. Many kids hit, grow up to abuse others. Family violence, street gangs, and the worst gang of all, soldiers waging war. I say there's only one guarantee for all people on earth, no matter how rich or poor, how famous or not famous. The only guarantee for all people is dying. And we all age. We all age unless we die first. Some things that can help us slow the aging process and can give us a good chance of a long, healthy life instead of years of misery before dying. Eating only raw plant foods. Getting enough sleep and sunshine. Much walking and exercise. Working for fairness and peace for all people. Sex and romance, if possible. Close friends of all ages. Apologizing when we wrong others. Forgiving when others wrong us. Many hugs. No booze, no cigarettes, dancing. All of these that I just mentioned, can slow aging and can give us a good chance of a long, healthy life instead of years of misery before we die. Do most college graduates live more wisely than minimum wage workers who never went to high school? Do most college graduates travel less, pollute less, cause less climate chaos? Do most college graduates consume less, live more simply and fairly in our world family of over 7 billion, now about 8 billion people estimated? Do most college graduates take strong public stands against U.S. greed, against U.S. wars? Do most college graduates take jobs that help more than harm? Do most college graduates pay less federal income tax for war? Gandhi said, when he was asked what worried him most, he said what worried him most was the hardness of heart of the educated. And when I think of the horrific crimes against humanity, the international crimes that are committed daily at Los Alamos Weapons Lab and Sandia Weapons Lab. Just as Gandhi said, what worried him most, the hardness of heart of the educated. Hundreds of highly educated scientists at Sandia and Los Alamos Weapons Lab spend decades designing nuclear weapons for mass murder of cities and nations. As long as the main motive for many students to get a college degree is to get much more money than anyone needs, to get big power and worldly prestige, higher education is no sure path to a better world of fairness and compassion for all people. Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. My life is my message. I, Don Schrader, I was a college dropout. I got good grades, but I got bored with having to read so many pages by a certain day or writing so many pages. I want to learn from everyday living, from conversations, from people I meet. I want to learn better how to live and how not to live. I constantly collect wisdom every day on how to live and how not to live. In the Vietnam War, the United States used white phosphorus, napalm, chemical agents on the Vietnamese people and on their land, the soil they used to grow their food. The United States committed these atrocities in Vietnam for almost 10 years. The United States sprayed Agent Orange poison 19 million gallons. 19 million gallons of Agent Orange poison on over 3,000 villages in Vietnam, causing awful sickness and birth defects in many Vietnamese people and in U.S. soldiers and their children. The U.S. companies Monsanto, Dow, and Uniroyal made that deadly poison Agent Orange to sicken and to kill our sisters and our brothers in Vietnam. The U.S. dropped 8 million tons of bombs on Vietnam. 8 million tons. 3 times all the bombs dropped by both sides in World War II. The 8 million tons of bombs the U.S. dropped on Vietnam were equal to 640 of the atomic bombs the U.S. dropped on Hiroshima. 3 to 5 million people, most of them not soldiers, most of them civilians. 3 to 5 million people the U.S. murdered in Vietnam, plus more in Laos, Cambodia, Thailand. The U.S. government told U.S. soldiers, shoot anything that moves. the U.S. government celebrated the high numbers of Vietnamese people the U.S. soldiers murdered. Evil? Absolutely evil. How many teachers in our high schools and colleges call it for what it was? Absolutely evil by this government, funded by U.S. federal income taxpayers. After the Gulf War, a large Albuquerque fundamentalist Christian church held a rally celebrating U.S. victory in Iraq. And I went to that rally here in Albuquerque. I held my sign strongly opposing war. A man told me, "Blessed is he who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rocks." And that is an awful actual verse from the Psalms in the Bible. And many Christian fundamentalists believe the Bible is the perfect Word of God. And many Muslim fundamentalists believe the Quran is the perfect Word of God. Some Muslim fundamentalists use verses from the Quran to justify their atrocities. Some Christian fundamentalists use verses from the Bible to justify evil U.S. wars. I highly recommend the great book in our city library, The Atheist Muslim, A Journey from Religion to Reason, by Ali A. Rizvi, R-I-Z-V-I. Honest, heartfelt, personal. Sadly, both the Bible and the Quran contain many terrible verses advocating war, violence, and other evils in God's name. I was a sincere Christian preacher 57 years ago, but I am no longer a believer. I identify deeply with the author of The Atheist Muslim in his long journey from religion to reason. I refuse to allow the Bible or the Quran or any book to turn off my mind and to harden my heart. I thank Mark, Eddie, and Travis for their excellent help dozens of times running the cameras and the controls for my program. And thanks to all of you watching. If you see me on the street or anywhere, I welcome you to talk with me if you want to. I love personal questions. I treasure heart-to-heart conversations. I would not drink sodas. I would not drink booze for $1,000. Sodas and booze are slow poison, but I drink my fresh piss to be healthy. I started drinking my piss November 1999, almost every day, nearly 24 years ago. I stopped for 2 months after the hit and run when I was receiving prescription drugs in the hospital because some of those drugs were in my piss. So I stopped for 2 months after the hit and run. But I'm glad to be back drinking my piss every day to be healthy. To your health and to my health. Good night.
Live every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past and life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be